After the great flood in Genesis, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham had a son called Cush, and through the family line of Cush there came a man called Nimrod. The Bible reports it like this.
Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Resen, which is between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city.
He was possibly the first king in world history. This is the first time the word kingdom is mentioned in the Bible. He was master and commander of a vast empire, the first man of renown, the first heroic warrior on earth. But when the Bible reports that Nimrod is the first mighty man in history, a fierce warrior and a great hunter, we should avoid being tempted into thinking highly of him, because the Hebrew root of the word for mighty man actually translates into English as tyrant. Indeed, his name, Nimrod, literally means "let us revolt" or "the rebel," and unlike the other descendants of Ham who mostly ended up in Africa or China, Nimrod, who it was believed was born in modern-day Ethiopia, headed towards the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. That's right, the exact spot where the Garden of Eden had been. The fact he was returning to the scene of the original fall of man to build his empire is significant in itself. He clearly meant something symbolic by it. Perhaps he was identifying with that scene of original rebellion. Perhaps he was metaphorically trying to build a new Eden by his own power and apart from God. Perhaps he was identifying with Cain by stubbornly returning to the spot that Cain had been expelled from. Perhaps it was all of these reasons, but it was here that he built the city of Babylon. He also built the city of Nineveh nearby and conquered the others that already existed in the area, thus creating his empire. As the first to learn the arts of war, Nimrod ruled and subdued his empire with an iron fist and was noted for his use of sorcery and fire to gain his victories. Like many men of renown in the ancient world, myths and legends arose around him to the extent that it's now impossible to discern which are true and which are not. What we can discern, however, is that he was strongly associated with fire, and that he used it in battle to strike fear into his enemies. This created an association with himself and the sun. Fire was seen to be the sun's earthly representation. We also know that he was sometimes represented as a bull, and that he probably wore a crown made from bull horns. The reason for this is that the Chaldean or Babylonian word for ruler was tur, which also meant bull.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other,
"Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly."
They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said,
"Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth."
With that cursory introduction to Semiramis, we can now explore the central monument of Nimrod's capital city, the Tower of Babel. This monument, commissioned by Nimrod, would be his power base, his castle, his palace, his throne. It's estimated that around 600,000 people were gathered together for its construction. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel to represent a sacred mountain, at the top of which he would have his throne room, his heaven, and he would rule from there as a god. It represents the deification of man, the idea that man can become a god. It is the old serpent's lie from Eden. Nimrod's subjects would have to ascend up the steps of the mountain for his council. In a city full of low-lying flat-topped roofs, he would literally be the most high among them, a constant visual reminder to the people of his supremacy. Wherever they were within Babylon and for miles around, they would see the top of the tower and know that their king and God was keeping a watchful eye over them from heaven, monitoring their every move. This would strike a mixture of fear and awe into his subjects. Nimrod was in fact the initiator of the idea of emperor worship, although it may not have been his idea originally. Evidence suggests that Semiramis was actually the brains behind this concept, and that it was a clever device for helping them keep a tight grip on their subjects. She appeared to understand that a surefire route to gaining earthly honor, prestige, and power is through religious authority. Nimrod was more than happy to go along with it. By turning himself into a god and establishing emperor worship as a common practice, he maintained control over his subjects. Because of his association with fire and the sun, he became known as the sun god. His consort, Semiramis, understandably became associated with a moon goddess. Around themselves as the sun and moon gods, they created an entire religion that was based on a corruption of the primeval astronomy developed by Noah's righteous ancestors prior to the flood. This religion has come to be known as the Mystery Religion.
One of the more popular forms of ancient idol worship was Baal worship, which is linked to Nimrod. Nimrod was the great-grandson of Noah. People began to worship him until Shem, one of Noah's sons, killed him. His wife Semiramis, or Ishtar, was left alone to rule. She is said to have been so beautiful that during a civil war, everyone came to a halt as she walked past.
But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. The Lord said,
"If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other."
So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world.
After Nimrod's death, Ishtar, meaning Easter, became pregnant with Tammuz. She claimed that the sun god Baal caused her to conceive. Tammuz would grow to be a great hunter like his father until he was killed by a wild boar. Ishtar claimed that her son Tammuz had ascended up to heaven to be with his father. Queen Ishtar became known as the Mother of God and Queen of Heaven. Queen Ishtar would eventually have eggs dipped in the blood of innocents. Although the origins of Easter and many holidays were originally rooted in paganism, what is important is that we as Christians recognize why we celebrate these holidays. Thus, the phrase, "the reason for the season."